soldiers and maintain operational superiority. Modernization remains a cornerstone of the Army's transformation, and I commend the progress made in recent years through the next generation combat systems, combined soldier lethality, and advanced network capability. However, progress must be matched by scrutiny. We must ensure that these efforts align with the demands of tomorrow's battlefield, where agility, resilience, and technological edge will define success. We must ensure that the investments in our Army reflect the needs of a multi-domain fight and strike the right balance between conventional capability and the specialized forces required for hybrid and asymmetric warfare. The Army has begun to implement a comprehensive transformation strategy to rapidly deliver capability, optimize force structure, and eliminate waste and obsolete programs. I'm interested in hearing how you will implement this strategy to achieve a more efficient and more effective Army. Today's hearing is an opportunity to address these issues head-on, to hear from our witnesses, and to chart a course that ensures the U.S. Army remains the world's preeminent land force. I look forward to a robust and insightful discussion. With that, I recognize the distinguished ranking member, Ms. McCollum, for her opening remarks.
Thank you for the courtesy, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary General George, welcome to the committee's discussion about the Army's plans to transform for the future. As the chairman pointed out, we're excited and interested in hearing your plans. As I said yesterday in our hearing with the Air Force, fiscal year 2026 budget process is off to a very rough start. We have just over 4 months left until the end of FY25, and the department still has not agreed upon a final spend plan with Congress. I know there's plans floating out there, but they haven't been agreed upon. The skinny budget for next year has been released, but we don't know what the numbers are based off of yet. These are rumors. The full budget may not even be released until June. All puts us in a very difficult position getting our job done, and I know both Ranking Member DeLora and Chairman Cole want to get our job done on time. And that's why yesterday we were unable really to discuss the Air Force and Space Force budget priorities in any detail. They just don't have the information. Likewise, it's disappointing that we're going to be unable to discuss the Army's priorities and programming details for FY26 at this time, and I know you share that concern. So I hope you will reach out to the committee, to the chair and I, with details as soon as they are released. Last week, you both presented the Army's transformative initiative, which will include changes to warfighting capabilities and force structure and program activities. And we do need to make changes. And I know you want to move quickly, very quickly. However, any successful transformation proposed by the services has only going to be made possible with an open dialogue with the United States Congress, the people of this country. That means you must work with us, with industry and with military communities involved. Bypassing any of these vital steps will only create questions and create delays, something I know you don't wish to have happen. And I know you want to put to rest any confusion, and I know it's not your desire to provoke anxiety, but not doing this in a forward, transparent manner could land up doing exactly that. So I look forward to hearing more details on the Army's transformation of initiative and how this differs from implementing the Army's 2030 initiative. What are the differences? So, Mr. Secretary, you also have proposals for agile funding, counter small unmanned aerial systems, network capabilities, civilian workforce decreases, and activities on the southern border. Your plate is full. So this committee needs to understand in depth the costs that will be associated with them. As I said yesterday in a meeting, a hearing that we had when reference to Golden Dome, this committee does not fund concepts. I don't do that in my personal life, and I do not do that with the taxpayers' money. So the sooner you have more details, the happier we all will be. As I said yesterday with the Air Force, I'm deeply concerned that cuts to civilian personnel will have detrimental effect on the executive execution of contracts and other vital paperwork. We are already living with the impacts of what happens when civilians take a buyout rather than to take a hand up to say that they'll continue to serve. What does that mean? It means contracts aren't signed on time, missions don't get done on time, and the program falls farther behind, and that means it will cost the taxpayers more money. I'm also concerned that these cuts will shift responsibility of completing these tasks onto the same military personnel that you would like to see out in the training field, and we would too. So again, I welcome you both to the committee, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. Mr. Chair, thank you again for the courtesy.
Thank you, and I appreciate your testimony. I'd like to now turn to the chairman of the full committee, my good friend Tom Cole. Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and let me begin with a couple off-the-cuff remarks and associate myself with my good friend, the ranking member's remarks in terms of just information. And look, we're very understanding. New administrations never meet the deadlines related. They can't. I mean, you don't have people approved and in place, so we understand. But, and I've had this discussion, and it's been a very positive discussion with OMB, and said the quicker you can get us this stuff, the better job we'll do. But the longer it takes, the more likely we are to miss our own, deadlines and stumble into another CR or something like that. And we don't want to do that. I know you certainly don't want us to do that. And I do want to thank you, and you were kind enough to call. I know the chairman got a call. I assume the ranking member probably did too, to let us know a little bit about the transformative initiative and what you were releasing. Very helpful, but I too look forward to seeing more detail as that goes down the road. But I appreciate what I saw. I certainly didn't have any objections to what was laid out. I was very positive and very impressed. So again, thank you both for coming here. The hearing comes at a pivotal moment for our national security as we face an increasingly complex and volatile global landscape. Among the challenges before us, none looms larger than the rising threat posed by China. With its rapid military modernization, expanding global influence, and assertive posture in the Indo-Pacific, China presents a strategic challenge that demands our full attention and robust response. The United States Army plays a critical role in deterring this threat and, if necessary, prevailing in any conflict that may arise. Today, I look forward to hearing how the Army is equipped to address this challenge head-on. We must ensure our forces are postured to counter China's growing capabilities, particularly in the realm of long-range strategic fires. The ability to strike with precision over vast distances is a necessity to maintain our competitive edge and protect our interests across the globe. I'm eager to understand how the Army is prioritizing the development and deployment of these capabilities to keep pace with our adversaries. Equally critical is the state of our munitions inventory. Recent global conflicts have underscored the importance of a resilient and well-stocked arsenal. We cannot afford to be caught unprepared, whether it's ensuring an adequate supply of artillery shells, precision-guided munitions, or advanced missile systems. I know that you will provide us in this committee with a candid assessment of where we stand today and what investments are needed to bolster our readiness for both the near and long haul. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to a productive discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Driscoll, please take 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Thank you.
Philosophies. You have, to your credit, said many times about both parties contributing to the national debt. I think I'll take issue as far as what percentage of the blame lies where, but nonetheless, I always appreciate the good bipartisan spirit you operate in. It's one of the reasons why you and I were able to work together on a piece of legislation that became signed into law last year to help the Congressional Budget Office serve Congress and the American people better. Now, as for this hearing, when I was told by my staff that there was going to be a hearing on the fiscal state of the nation, I have to admit, I made a prediction that was wrong. I said, surely the Republicans will cancel that hearing, because the last thing they want to talk about is what it has only taken Donald Trump 3 months to do to the fiscal state of this nation. Just think back to only 3 months ago. We had, by no means a perfect economy, but we had an economy that was growing and had been growing for 4 straight years. We had inflation down to the low 2s, down almost exactly at target level, which would enable, and was projected would enable, the Fed to cut interest rates this year 3 times. All of that progress and things headed in the right direction. Every economist, liberal, conservative, moderate, predicting continued growth as far as the eye could see. 3 months later, what do we have now? Decline, a 0.3% contraction. It is projected next quarter, the quarter we're in now, will even be worse, which means that would hit the textbook definition of a recession. And prices? What did last week's report show? All that progress we made over several years getting back to the 2% target, gone. Prices jumped to about 3.5%, and that's before the full impact of the tariffs have taken effect. Markets down, prices up, growth down, and projected to get even worse. One person did that, the President of the United States. There have been multiple recessions in the last 25 years, 3 previous ones. 2001, which was prompted by the 9/11 terrorist attacks. 2008, the Great Recession, which was prompted by the collapse of the real estate bubble. And 2020, of course, which was prompted by the COVID pandemic. This is the first recession, I believe in my lifetime, entirely created by the policies of one president. So what can we, the first article of the Constitution, do about it? We are, after all, a co-equal branch of government. Nothing. We have a few Senate Republicans who are willing to vote against the tariffs. Otherwise, we hear crickets from House Republican leadership. Do we really think our nation's founders would have been comfortable with giving unilateral tariff power to one executive? Of course not. It is time for Congress to finally, on a bipartisan basis, have a few of our Republican friends join with us on the Democratic side of the aisle and say enough with Donald Trump's price increases. The American people literally can't afford it. Our economy can't afford it. Yet we don't see any action whatsoever in this regard. Instead, we see a reconciliation plan that is promising to provide up to $7 trillion of tax cuts, almost all of which will be debt financed. We hear a lot about deficit and debt. This bill will make things far worse. In fact, one very smart, not Democratic source that I talk to that follows the bond markets believes there is not sufficient demand in the international markets to buy all of the debt that we will soon be flooding onto those markets if the Republican reconciliation plan passes. It is true there are some in the House approach who have advocated the biggest Medicaid cuts in American history, the biggest cuts to nutrition assistance in American history, cuts to student loan programs, and much more. I vigorously disagree with those cuts. I disagree with it on principle and on philosophy. But I will say, at least there's an effort by some on the House Republican side to at least pay for some of their tax cuts. I don't think that's the approach, though, that we will by and large see. Instead, what we see is something called the current policy baseline. Now, this is terrible inside baseball speak, but let me very briefly explain what current policy baseline is. It is a total fraud. Imagine I ate a brownie yesterday, and because I ate a brownie yesterday, the brownie that I eat today will cost me 0 calories. And the brownie that I eat tomorrow, 0 calories. For the rest of my life, calorie-free brownies. Why? Because I'll have deemed, well, it's the current policy baseline. I had a brownie yesterday. Give me a break. We think we have a debt problem right now. Can you imagine if current policy baseline becomes the new norm around here, I predict both sides will use it. It will be just as, mark these words and save this, it will be just as disingenuous, regardless if he uses it, to pretend that something costs $0 and 0 calories when we know it just ain't so. So with that, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman, and I will make a final plea. Let us stop the pain being inflicted on American families now before it's too late. Let's have Congress reassert its powers as it relates to tariffs and trade. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania, and in the interest of time, if other members have opening statements, I ask that you submit them for the record. We will hold the record open to the end of the day to accommodate those members who may not yet have had time to prepare written statements. Again, we thank our witnesses for being here today. Committee's received your written statements, and they'll be made part of the formal hearing record. You will each have 5 minutes to deliver your oral remarks. Dr. Raw, you may begin. It's Raw, not Rao. Rao. Okay. Okay. They even gave me a phonetic Raw in here. So, Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao, that's how it looks like it would sound. So, Dr. Rao, you're going to start off. We got 5 minutes. And thank you for being here.
Harrington, Ranking Member Boyle, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Interest payments on our national debt now surpass the entire defense budget. Deficits are approaching $2 trillion per year on $5 trillion of revenue. This path threatens our long-term prosperity and national security. I'm going to make 4 points. Additional details are included in my written testimony. First point, rising interest payments on the national debt are consuming ever larger shares of government revenue. Using the CBO's figures, I calculate that 18 cents of every dollar of federal revenue in 2024 went out the door to pay interest. That is scheduled to rise to 22 cents in 10 years, putting extraordinary pressure on the rest of the budget. It's likely to be much worse. The CBO projects that the 10-year Treasury yield will settle down gently at 3.8% in 10 years' time. It's around 4.3% today. But if bondholders don't like our fiscal trajectory, or the Fed has to fight inflation, interest rates could be much higher. Markets already think they will be. The current forward rate for 10-year Treasuries exceeds the CBO's projection by more than 1 percentage point.
2023, terrorist attack in Israel to the present. The Haverford administration has consistently refused to act against severe anti-Semitic harassments on campus. It has refused to even condemn these incidents of harassment or hostility in a clear, unequivocal statement, much less meaningfully discipline the students responsible for these incidents. Instead, the university has exhibited an all-consuming commitment to dialogue, even when that dialogue is dominated by anti-Semitic conspiracy theories or calls to violence. What's more, Haverford employs faculty members who engage in blatant anti-Semitism with no apparent consequences. For example, one professor declared online that Zionism is Nazism. The Haverford administration's failure to address anti-Semitism on campus is taking a painful toll on students, faculty, and staff. Without objection, I'd like to enter into the record a letter from Haverford's Shabbat House that was sent just yesterday afternoon, to the Haverford Board of Managers. The letter says, under this administration, Jewish students have been marginalized, ostracized, and at times outright attacked. Meanwhile, their pain has been met with indifference, end quote. I also was caught with their early statement in the letter where it says, we've never spoken out against the college. We've never publicly criticized its leadership. We've simply tried to serve, to support Haverford and its students in every way we could, but today we can no longer remain silent. I submit this for the record, and without objection, it's submitted. At DePaul, meanwhile, there have been multiple instances of fiscal violence against Jewish students. Last May, the university permitted a multi-week encampment that was so disruptive and violent that the nearby elementary school had to cancel recess. After finally forcibly shutting down the encampment, DePaul still ended up giving in to agitators' demands. We have a student here today who had surgery as a result of the attack on him and a colleague. And at Cal Poly, at least one faculty member has been complicit in harassing Jewish students who were trying to attend an Israel-related special lecture. My colleagues and I are committed to holding these three universities and others accountable for perpetuating anti-Semitism. We're committed to enacting policies that create a safe environment for Jewish students, one in which faculty, staff, and administrators are held accountable for the anti-Semitism that consumes their campuses. I look forward to hearing your testimony today, as it will certainly inform this committee's future work. With that, I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being with us today. The month of May marks Jewish Heritage Month. It's when we celebrate the generations of Jewish Americans who've made incredible contributions to this country. This month, we reaffirm our commitment to combat the rise of anti-Semitism, both on and off college campuses. No one should be discriminated against because of who they are or how they worship. And all students have the right to learn in a safe environment free from discrimination in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Unfortunately, instead of properly enforcing Title VI, this committee is holding the 8th hearing describing the problem and complaining about anti-Semitism on college campuses instead of taking any meaningful action to actually solve the problem. Curiously, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have not had any hearings addressing other forms of discrimination and hate, such as racism, Title IX gender violations, Islamophobia, homophobia, or the challenges of meeting the needs of students with disabilities. And this is particularly concerning since we know from reports from the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights that on January 11th of last year, there were 12,000 open cases alleging discrimination and violation of Title VI. 12,000. And of those 12,000 cases, only 144 could be Title VI violations involving anti-Semitism. And we know the solution of this problem is better enforcement of Title VI. So instead of holding another hearing talking about the problem, which complains about the problem, we ought to be holding a hearing on what is going on in the Office of Civil Rights, OCR, the Department of Education. This administration is in the process of dismantling the Office of Civil Rights, and it raises reasonable doubt about the plans for addressing anti-Semitism on campus, as well as racism, homophobia, sexism, Islamophobia, or the needs of students with disabilities. Again, we should be focused on trying to solve the problem rather than just complaining about it. For centuries, college campuses have served as centers for debate and discussion on polarizing issues in our country. Unfortunately, this also means that they can become flashpoints for controversy. But it is fundamental for us to understand that we must protect student safety while also fostering college campuses as a place of learning where difficult topics can be discussed civilly without fear of retribution. OCR has typically and historically played a vital role in preserving that balance. When a suspected incidence of discrimination occurs on college campuses, OCR can investigate the claim. And when I say investigate, you've produced a letter from Jewish students on campus. The administration has letters from Jewish students on campus. Nice to have an investigation to find out what the facts are. But the OCR can investigate the claim, and there's an established process. Should an institution be found to violate its duty to provide a safe learning environment, OCR's process to work with the school will allow it to address the harm. Specifically, the institution is expected to take appropriate action to, quote, end the harassment, eliminate the hostile environment, prevent its reoccurrence, and address its effect as appropriate. And if this does not happen, the Department of Education can begin to withhold funds from the part of the institution which is in violation. However, in its first 3 months, the Trump administration has closed out 7 of 12 OCR regional offices, all of which conduct investigations into discrimination, and all of which conduct investigations into discrimination on campus, whether based on antisemitism or race, national origin, gender, or disability. According to public reports, nearly half of the OCR staff has been laid off, and so one is left to wonder, how can OCR carry out its important responsibilities with half the staff? My concerns have been confirmed by other reporting of students struggling to get assistance with ongoing cases because their attorney has been laid off. Moreover, instead of conducting investigations according with the law, the Trump administration has taken a sledgehammer to due process rights of institutions. But the public has seen a barrage of reports of this administration taking action without any investigation, such as taking away federal funding, students and professors having their international visas revoked, students who have been disappeared into detention centers, and threats to revoke tax-exempt status of multiple universities. Schools are also told to accept a list of the administration's demand, all without OCR first conducting a fact-finding investigation. In short, that is not due process. For some of us, this doesn't come as a surprise. After all, just this past weekend, the president appeared on NBC News and was asked whether he believes that he should uphold the Constitution, and he responded, "I don't know." Of course, one cannot forget that this is also the same president who thought there were, quote, very fine people on both sides after white supremacists marched through Charlottesville in 2017 chanting, "Jews will not replace us." And what everyone, including people you may disagree with, everyone is entitled to due process, and all students should be able to seek recourse if they've been discriminated against. Similarly, institutions should be given a chance to address the harms on their campus without fear of political retribution. And perhaps we should be proactive and utilize agencies in federal government like the Community Relations Services at the Department of Justice, which can serve as a peacemaker when there are problems in communities. Of course, regrettably, the Community Relations Service is on the chopping block right now at the Department of Justice. So we hope we can have a productive conversation today, that the centers of students and the in higher education, but hopefully one day we will begin having a hearing on solutions rather than continuing to complain about the problem. Now, before I yield back, when I said 12,000, that's the cases, total cases in the backlog, not the total number of cases. But the point, obviously, is that the number of anti-Semitism cases of all of the cases is a very small number, and if we're going to investigate Title VI violations, we ought to be investigating all of them, and we ought to be looking at what is going on at OCR, because that will be ultimately the solution to the problem. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8C, all members who wish to insert written statements into the record may do so by submitting them to the committee clerk electronically in Microsoft Word by 5 p.m. 14 days after this hearing. And without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 14 days to allow such statements and other extraneous material noted during the hearing to be submitted for the official hearing record. I'll now turn to the introduction of our four witnesses. Our first witness is Dr. Wendy Raymond, the president of Haverford College in Haverford, Pennsylvania. Welcome. Our second witness is Dr. Robert Manuel, the president of DePaul University in Chicago, Illinois. Welcome. Our third witness is Mr. David Cole, the George J. Mitchell Professor in Law and Public Policy at the Georgetown University Law Center in Washington, D.C. Mr. Cole was formerly the National Legal Director for the American Civil Liberties Union. Welcome. Our last witness is Dr. Jeffrey Armstrong, the president of California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo, California. We thank the witnesses for being here today. Pursuant to the committee rules, I would ask that you each limit your oral presentation to a 3-minute summary of your written statement. The clock will count down from 3 minutes, as committee members have been many questions for you, and we would like to spend as much time as possible on questions. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8D, the committee practice, however, we will not cut off your testimony until you reach the 5-minute mark. I would also like to remind the witnesses to be aware of their responsibility to provide accurate information to the committee. I'll first recognize Dr. Raymond for your testimony.
Chairman Wahlberg, Ranking Member Scott, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Before I begin, I want to make it clear that Haverford condemns, in the strongest possible terms, anti-Semitism in all its forms. Haverford College is a liberal arts college outside Philadelphia, with about 1,500 undergraduate students. It's been a privilege to serve as president for the last 6 years. We are a secular institution established in 1833 by a group of Quakers. That Quaker history is one of the many qualities that make Haverford the distinctive place it is today. Small and close-knit, the college encourages and values open inquiry and free expression, core tenets of academic freedom. Education here is grounded in the Quaker assumption that intellectual and ethical growth are never complete. In the past few years, we have been tested like never before. The horrific terrorist attacks by Hamas against Israel caused unfathomable pain on our campus and around the world. Moreover, the ongoing war and loss of innocent lives in Israel and Gaza have left many shaken. In the wake of these events, we've seen a troubling rise in anti-Semitism in our communities and on our campuses. In the days following the attacks, I was inspired by how the Haverford community came together. At the same time, events have occurred on our campus that are inconsistent with our values. I take these incidents and Haverford's response very seriously. We have taken significant steps to address these issues and strengthen our policies. That includes updating our policies, strengthening campus safety programs, deepening engagement with the Jewish community, launching programs to combat anti-Semitism, and forming our ad hoc committee on free expression. I recognize that we haven't always succeeded in living up to our ideals. Many have wished that the college, or I as president, had responded differently to various actions. And we continue to make progress and invest in the quality of the campus experience for all Haverford students. In closing, I would like to address the Haverford community directly. You are the ones pushing us to be better. I hear you and acknowledge that we can do better, and I can do better. And to our Jewish students, some of you who are here today, I wish to make it unmistakably clear that you are valued members of our community and on our campus. I am sorry that my actions and my leadership let you down. I remain committed to addressing anti-Semitism and all issues that harm our community members. I am committed to getting this right. This is an unprecedented time in our college's history, and I continue to believe in the Haverford community. I thank you for demonstrating how, together, we can work toward creating a better and more peaceful world. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, President Raymond. And now, Dr. Manuel, we recognize you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Wahlberg, Ranking Member Scott, Members of the committee, I want to thank you for this opportunity to discuss DePaul's efforts to combat anti-Semitism and keep our campus safe. For more than 125 years, DePaul's Catholic Vincentian mission has been grounded in the belief that every human being possesses inherent dignity and worth, a belief that compels us to stand firmly against anti-Semitism in all its forms. Since the terrorist attacks by Hamas on October 7th, we've taken strong steps to support our Jewish community members, prioritizing campus safety and student well-being. We've made mistakes along the way. As DePaul's leader, I want to acknowledge that openly. To our students, our parents, our faculty, our staff, our alumni, and our friends, I am deeply sorry. I know there are areas where we must and will do better. I also wish to speak directly to two of our students who were attacked last November. What happened to them was a hate crime. No one should ever be attacked because of who they are, and I am sorry for the pain that they're experiencing. For the past year and a half, we have taken concrete steps to ensure Jewish students and all students are safe on our campus. For example, we've just implemented a new ID verification and mask policy. We've introduced new limits on campus protests through our time, place, and manner restrictions, and we've enforced them. The operations for Students for Justice in Palestine are currently suspended from campus, and we banned a group, not a student group, behind enemy lines from our campus. We've hired a former ADL professional to assist in our Jewish engagement on campus. We've created a dedicated task force on anti-Semitism. We've supported the creation of the Jewish Faculty Staff Alliance, and now we're also launching a Jewish alumni group. We've also made substantial investments to increase security and safety across our urban Chicago campuses, and I've commissioned an external review of our security programs to improve campus safety. As an institution founded on Catholic principles, we believe this moment demands moral clarity. Anti-Semitism is not only a threat to Jewish students, faculty, and staff, it's a threat to the very fabric of our American society. I recognize that for many in our Jewish community, Israel is a core part of their identity. Those community members and every community member deserve to feel safe on campus without exception. We began this work over a year and a half ago. While there's more work to be done, the changes we have made are already fostering a culture of accountability on our campus. We recognize the vigilance on this topic and that it'll need to be a focal point of our work going forward. You have my commitment that we are focused on continuing to make real progress and take action. As a person of faith, I'm personally committed to confronting anti-Semitism wherever it appears, in our institutions, in our communities, and in ourselves. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Emanuel. And now I recognize Mr. David Cole for your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Walden and Ranking Member Scott.
Press the button, turn the mic on there, please.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Walberg, much better, and Ranking Member Scott for inviting me to testify today. I come not so much to comment on the specifics of what happened at Haverford, DePaul, or Cal Poly, but to provide a legal framework and a cautionary note. In my work with the ACLU and others, I have defended the speech rights of everyone from the National Rifle Association, which I represented successfully in the Supreme Court just last year, to fundamentalist Christians, to Palestinian students. I've also challenged discrimination on the basis of race, sex, and religion. I care deeply about both values, free speech and equality, and both are at stake here. I have 3 points. First, anti-Semitic speech, while lamentable, is constitutionally protected. Just like racist speech, sexist speech, and homophobic speech is. The Supreme Court protected the rights of the Nazi Party to march in Skokie, the home of Holocaust survivors. Sorry, I just turned my thing off. It protected the rights of the Westboro Baptist Church to hurl homophobic slurs at a military funeral. And it protected the rights of the Ku Klux Klan to burn crosses and engage in racist speech. As Chief Justice Roberts explained in the Westboro Baptist Church case, while such speech obviously causes deep harm, the greater danger is giving government officials the power to censor speech by labeling it anti-Semitic, racist, or sexist. Second, Title VI does not prohibit anti-Semitic speech. It prohibits only the discriminatory denial of equal access to education. An anti-Semitic slogan at a protest or online does not deny equal access to education any more than a sexist or a racist comment at a rally does. Anti-Semitic speech implicates Title VI in only two narrow circumstances. First, where it constitutes harassment targeted at an individual because of that individual's Jewish identity. Not because he supports Israel, but because of his Jewish identity specifically. And second, where the speech is not targeted, say at a rally, where it is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it denies equal access to an education. That's a very high standard. It's almost never been met in the case law. That means most anti-Semitic speech does not implicate Title VI at all. Therefore, a school committed to free speech should be tolerating it, not suppressing it, as this committee would ask. And Title VI governs only colleges, not students. So when a student harasses another student, that student hasn't violated Title VI, and the college hasn't violated Title VI because the student doesn't speak for the college. The college only violates Title VI if it is deliberately indifferent to the act. Deliberately indifferent. Again, a very high standard set forth by the Supreme Court in the Davis case and almost never met. That's basically you ignore what has happened rather than respond. Deliberate indifference is not responding to anti-Semitism in a way that this committee doesn't think is sufficient. And that leads me to my third and final point. The line between protected anti-Semitic speech and prohibited anti-Semitic discrimination is necessarily fact-intensive. It requires a careful assessment of what was said, to whom, and why it was said. As a result, it is not sufficient to make general accusations of anti-Semitism, as members of this committee have repeatedly done in all of the prior hearings and already today, any more than it is sufficient under Title IX to label an encounter between two students sexual harassment. You need to look at what happened, hear both sides of the encounter, and make a legal assessment, not a political harangue. And therefore, getting to the bottom of what happened here requires fair hearings where both sides are heard about specific incidents. And this committee room is not the place to do that. This committee has not held a single hearing looking into a specific incident and having the perpetrator and the complainant testify and trying to figure out what has happened. Instead, it is engaged in broad-based charges of anti-Semitism without any factual predicate. With all due respect, these proceedings have had more in common with those of the House
I'd ask the
Un-American
gentleman to
Activities Committee.
conclude. You've gone past the 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I could just, I have one final comment.
Very quick.
Take me a second. Yeah, these proceedings, with all due respect, have more in common with those of the House Un-American Activities Committee. They are not an attempt to find out what happened, but an attempt to chill protected speech.
Thank you for
that
your
was
testimony.
A mistake then, and it's a mistake.
Thank you for your testimony, and I think we did not step on your testimony at that point.
Thank you.
Now I recognize Dr. Armstrong for your testimony.
Good morning, Chairman Wahlberg, Ranking Member Scott, and members of the committee. For the past 14 years, it's been my privilege to serve as president of Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. At Cal Poly, we emphasize a learn-by-doing approach, providing hands-on, practical experience, learning from experiences, and constantly getting better. Over the past 18 months, questions have been asked about how higher education institutions confront, prevent, and combat anti-Semitism that escalated after the 2023 Hamas attacks against Israeli citizens. The October 7 attacks on innocent men, women, and children were horrific. The violence perpetrated that day must be condemned without equivocation. And the targeting of Jewish students on campuses across the U.S. that followed was terrible and unacceptable. Both as a university president and a human being, this is a matter I take particularly seriously. We have to do better. At Cal Poly, when people do not live up to our commitment to prohibit prejudice and bias, we hold them accountable. We have dealt with anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination by faculty, staff, visitors, and students. We do not tolerate threatening activity. We deploy campus police whenever there is potential for threatening activity or trouble, and they make arrests and file criminal charges when justified. In addition, when alleged anti-Semitism or harassment occurs, we investigate and impose immediate university discipline. At Cal Poly, we have enjoyed a vibrant Jewish community for many years. Stakeholders rate Jewish life on our campus at a high level, and the number of Jewish students has doubled since 2011. Hillel and Chabad are registered Cal Poly student organizations, and I and my wife have been invited to and proudly participated in some of their activities. I am grateful to the Jewish student leaders who traveled across the country to join me here today. In addition to those long-standing partnerships, I've been working with the ADL and other Jewish leaders on several ongoing and some new initiatives. First, we have continued to be certain to speak out to oppose anti-Semitism. Second, we are enhancing our mandatory student orientation and biennial employee training to provide greater education and awareness about anti-Semitism. Our team is participating in the 5th cohort of Hillel's Campus Climate Initiative. To date, our administrators have attended 8 training sessions. Third, we're establishing a new presidential anti-Semitism task force that will develop an action plan focused on Jewish student life, anti-Semitism education, and cultural awareness. Fourth, we're continuing to fundraise to endow a chair in Jewish studies and build an interfaith center that includes Jewish students. Our efforts to support Jewish students and combat anti-Semitism have made progress. I want to emphasize that our goal is continuous improvement. We will work to give each student the safest possible environment, free from discrimination and religious intolerance, so they can learn, grow, and succeed. We call it being ready day one. We will continue to strongly confront any anti-Semitic conducts or threats. In conclusion, I want to thank you for the important work on this issue and pledge our continuing support.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. Under Committee Rule 9, we'll now question witnesses under the 5-minute rule. I'll recognize myself for the first 5 minutes. This question is for all 3 presidents. All of your schools have been hotbeds of Semitism at some point. Please tell me how many students at your schools have been suspended and how many have been expelled for anti-Semitic conduct since October 7th, 2023. President Raymond?
We don't publicize those numbers, and we use suspension and expelling as normal parts of our disciplinary process.
But you don't have numbers to give us, so we assume there have been none.
We do not talk about those numbers publicly.
Mr. Manuel?
Thank you for the question. Post-October 7th, there were 8 student groups investigated. 2 were suspended and put on probation. I believe there were 2 arrests after the encampment dissolution. One of them, I believe, was a student.
Thank you. President Armstrong?
As a result of events in 2024, we've had a total of 6 students disciplined, with the discipline ranging from 2-quarter suspension to deferred suspension to probation.
Thank you. President Manuel, you say you're committed to addressing anti-Semitism on campus. The group Students for Justice in Palestine, or SJP, is at the very center of your anti-Semitism problem. Students have been physically and verbally assaulted at multiple SJP protests. SJP was central to the May 2024 encampment, which caused $500,000 in damage. SJP has also circulated deeply anti-Semitic posts on Instagram, including a recent post accusing Israel of being just like the Nazis. President Manuel, considering SJP's history of harassment and violence against Jewish students and its repeated refusal to abide by university policies, will you commit to finally permanently banning SJP from campus?
Thank you for the question. SJP has been suspended. They are on probation, and this post that I think you're referring to happened on Thursday. They were immediately suspended in all their operations from campus pending a new hearing. The cumulative effect of their work will be considered in the results or the outcomes of that next hearing. I'd be happy to report back to you on their
I'd be
findings.
glad to receive that. The cumulative effect seems like it's gone on, and I believe it'd be a point in time for banning. President Raymond, in March, the Haverford and Bryn Mawr group Faculty and Staff for Justice in Palestine, or FSJP, praised a Palestinian terrorist who led an attack in 1978 that killed 38 Israelis, including 13 children. FSJP claimed that the terrorist, and I quote, scarified herself for her country and fought for the freedom of many Palestinians. Does praising the murder of Jews violate any Haverford policies?
Of course it does.
Thank you.
There's no place for that,
Thank you.
ever, anywhere.
Another FSJP post applauded a member of the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, a U.S.-designated terrorist group, because she trained for military operations. Did Haverford professors in this group face any consequences whatsoever?
I am not aware of that particular post, and anti-Semitism in any of its forms is not tolerated at Haverford College.
Well, with these faculty, it seems to have been. I'm going to ask you a few questions about statements we've heard on Haverford's campus since the October 7th terrorist attack against Israel. And again, I will not display all that's in this book, but this reminds us that the attack was not from Israel. The attack was from Hamas. Brutal, unprovoked attack as well. Is the phrase, "long live the Intifada," protected speech on Haverford's campus? Yes or no?
That is an anti-Semitic form of speech.
Is the phrase, "from Gaza to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone," protected speech on Haverford's campus?
That is repugnant speech. I disavow it. It is anti-Semitic.
And happening. Is the phrase, "resistance is not terrorism," protected speech on Haverford's campus?
Any anti-Semitic speech I will not defend, and at Haverford we do protect speech.
Do these statements call for the genocide of Jews?
There is no tolerance for any such speech that would call for that.
Well, we hope we see that soon to come. Hamas is gaining support and comfort from schools that allow this to go on, and these go beyond just simply words. They include faculty and students blocking the freedom of education and life itself for Jewish students. I yield back, and now I recognize Representative Bonamici, the gentlelady from Oregon, for her questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've said before in this committee, there has been an undeniable rise in anti-Semitism and hate speech across the country and around the globe. Anti-Semitism is a real problem that has existed for thousands of years and should be taken seriously by schools and universities and by elected officials. Jewish students deserve to feel safe and be safe on campus and everywhere. No one should be afraid of harassment or discrimination because of their faith. And I strongly condemn acts of violence and want to emphasize that people who break the law must be held accountable. But if instead of engaging with this topic genuinely and constructively, we have another performative hearing during which the majority will try to blame the left and what they consider liberal or elitist institutions and colleges for acts of anti-Semitism. It's another chapter in the majority's battle against higher education. And as we've discussed repeatedly, but is worth restating, when white supremacists marched in Charlottesville with burning tiki torches, chanting, "Jews will not replace us," President Trump said there were fine people on both sides, and I don't recall the Republican majority calling that out. General Kelly, who served as chief of staff in the first Trump administration, said that Donald Trump spoke favorably about Hitler, saying that Hitler had done some good things. Some Republican members of Congress have promoted conspiracy theories like Jewish space lasers that control weather and have accused, quote, Jewish globalist elites of pulling strings behind the scenes of government. Another, a member of this committee, quoted Hitler on the steps of the Capitol. Several members of President Trump's inner circle have public and prominent ties to white nationalist and white supremacist groups. There are more examples, but I've made the point. If this committee is going to tackle the rise in anti-Semitism, let's start there. Let's denounce and condemn all instances of anti-Semitism, including from colleagues and the administration. If we truly want to protect Jewish Americans, we need to speak out regardless of this source and not turn a blind eye when anti-Semitic attacks come from leaders of a political party. For those of us who do want to stop the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses, I remind you that the federal government already has an entity in place to investigate and resolve anti-Semitic instances, the Office of Civil Rights, and it is housed, at least for now, in the Department of Education. But unfortunately, Secretary McMahon has fired almost half of OCR's staff and closed 7 of their 12 regional offices. President Trump's recent budget called for a 35% cut to the Office of Civil Rights. Will any of the Republicans on this committee stand against the dismantling of the Office of Civil Rights? I doubt it, because that would require a real commitment to combating anti-Semitism. And if you truly want to stand up for the Jewish people, condemn the white Christian nationalism seeping into policy in the White House. Speak up against the attempts to end the separation of religion and government. Show your support for freedom of religion. It is unconscionable to weaponize the real problems of the Jewish community for political gain, and I'm not going to engage in more back and forth in this hearing with people who call out anti-Semitism when it's part of their anti-higher education agenda, but not when it's coming from their side of the aisle. Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter in a statement into the record from Northwestern University in which more than 100 Jewish faculty and staff members raised serious concerns about how Congress is addressing anti-Semitism. They say we come from different points on a political compass. We express our identities as Jews in myriad ways, but we are united by the conviction that our Jewishness must not be used as a cudgel to silence the vigorous exchange of ideas that lie at the heart of university life. And I also request unanimous consent to insert into the record a statement from the Jewish Council on Public Affairs and a broad coalition of Jewish groups in which they emphasize that they, quote, firmly reject the false choice between confronting anti-Semitism and upholding democracy. Our safety as Jews has always been tied to the rule of law, to the safety of others, to the strength of civil society, and to the protection of rights and liberty for all. It continues, it is both possible and necessary to fight anti-Semitism on campus, in our communities, and across the country without abandoning the democratic values that have allowed Jews and so many other vulnerable minorities to thrive. Mr. Chairman, as a mother who raised her children in a Jewish home—
Without objection, they will be received.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a mother who raised her children in a Jewish home and as an active member of my synagogue for more than 25 years, I can no longer pretend that this is a good faith effort to root out anti-Semitism, especially when the Trump administration and the majority party are regularly undermining Jewish values, including justice, loving kindness, free speech, freedom of religion, and the Jewish responsibility of tikkun olam, to repair the world. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. I now recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Representative Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chairman Tim Walberg, and I appreciate your leadership for promoting real academic freedom with real diversity of ideology, with equality, and with real political inclusion. With that in mind, all Americans in good faith want college education to be uplifting for students and to achieve the American dream. But unfortunately, the barbaric mass murder of October 7th by Iranian puppets of Hamas invading Israel has shockingly revealed that many college campuses are anti-Semitic in defending the maniacal Hamas agenda. The world should know the Hamas Covenant of August 18, 1988 declares in the midst of insane provisions, Article 7, quote, "The day of judgment will come when all and not come and about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews, when the Jew will hide behind stones and trees. The stones and trees will say, 'Oh, Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him,'" end of quote. That's their ideology. Free Palestine from the river to the sea is a code for death to Israel, death to America. We know that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I'm very grateful that I grew up in South Carolina and represent South Carolina. At the time of the American Revolution, the largest Jewish population in the New World was in Charleston, South Carolina. The very first provincial constitution to recognize Judaism was the Provincial Constitution of South Carolina. The first Jewish American elected official in the New World was the Provincial Assembly of South Carolina, and sadly, the first Jewish American killed in the Revolution was in Charleston, South Carolina. And so that's the environment I grew up in. In South Carolina, we do not tolerate anti-Semitism. We promote diversity of ideology, equality, and we promote additionally ideological inclusion. President Raymond, we know that unfortunately anti-Semitism has existed long before the murderous atrocities of October 7th, and sadly I visited Kibbutz Nir Oz. I visited the music site where the slaughters occurred, the mass slaughters. The committee recently learned that in 2020 you met with a Jewish student about the severe harassment and cyberbullying that he was experiencing at Haverford because of his Jewish identity. In response, you allegedly gave him a book by a Buddhist monk and told him that he should accept the harassment and, quote, "let it wash over," end of quote. Should Jewish students at Haverford simply let the experience of anti-Semitism wash over them?
Our Jewish students and our Jewish community are highly valued at Haverford. They have been an important part of our community for a long time. And my top priority is ensuring the well-being and safety of all of our students.
And so I'm confident you've changed policies since then. With this, Dr. Armstrong, you're identified as an outspoken DEI proponent. I believe that DEI, it chills and actually restricts and restrains academic freedom. It's been my view that diversity means no ideological diversity, no conservative. I remember in college, with my National Review, I would fold it in half because I didn't want my professors to see. I was reading the writings of William F. Buckley, Jr., seditious. With the equity, what that means is that all are the same, regardless of what's the achievement level, and it denies equality of opportunity. And inclusion, again, is so political. That means no Republicans. I remember that I had, in my undergraduate and law school, one Republican professor, Professor J.D. Futch III of Baltimore. And I knew where the others were coming from. And so what is your interpretation of DEI? Because as it's being experienced, it's chilling, as Mr. Cole said. What's your experience?
Well, thank you for your question. I go back to Cal Poly since I've been there. We've focused on student success and all student success. So we've
does that mean equity for everybody? They all get the same grade?
Oh, no, sir. Cal Poly's a very competitive university.
It should be.
And we have been admitting students under Prop 209 has been in existence for more than 25 years in California. So we've been operating under an affirmative action ban during that time. And we have had significant changes in the makeup of our population because we've increased financial aid and made students more able to
As we
travel
conclude,
to
I would really
Cal Poly.
like to know the percentage of conservatives on your of professors, the percentage of Republicans, because I'm sadly concerned there are none or very few. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I recognize the gentleman from California, Representative Takano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to associate myself with the remarks of my colleague, Suzanne Bonamici. I know of no member who exemplifies more the principle of tikkun olam than her, to repair the world. And I saw some rolling of the eyes, which is, of course, people are entitled to their opinions, and we in our country have different viewpoints. And we must seek not only tolerance, but encouragement of a difference of a point of view. I, too, condemn anti-Semitism, unequivocally. I condemn Islamophobia unequivocally. I condemn all discrimination based on religion. And universities must set that principle. But, you know, we have a system, we have in place legal mechanisms to hold the universities accountable who receive federal money, to hold them accountable for discrimination that occurs on the basis of religion. Mr. Cole, if a student or faculty member feels that their Title VI civil rights, you know, their ability to not be discriminated based on their religion, that those Title VI rights have been violated, what federal agency is tasked with the investigation of their claim and enforcement of civil rights law?
The Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education.
So the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, which prior to the Trump administration was the largest federal agency tasked with the enforcement of civil rights in the country, and that would include Title VI rights which involve religious discrimination.
That's right.
How many OCR field offices have been closed under the Trump administration?
My understanding is 7 of the 12, so more than half have been closed.
7 of the 12. In the remaining offices, we hear anecdotally that some attorneys are being tasked with up to 300 cases per staffer. How long typically does one case take to get resolved?
It can take a very long time to get resolved, and if you cut the staff in half, it's going to take twice as long.
And why does it take so long? You mentioned earlier in testimony.
It takes so long for a couple of reasons. One is you actually have to look at the facts, not make broad allegations as this committee seems to do, but rather look at the actual facts of what happened, assess both sides of the story, not just one, then make a determination as to whether it is actually discrimination. Then if it actually constitutes discrimination, then you go to the university and you say, how did you respond? And if the university responded by holding a hearing and making an assessment, that no violation has occurred. Only if the university was deliberately indifferent, ignored the violation, and established violation, is it responsible. So you have to actually have a fair hearing. You have to look at the facts. You have to hear both sides, not simply come into a committee room and make broad allegations without any assessment of what the actual facts are.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. I note here that we have universities that are near San Francisco, Chicago, and Philadelphia. All 3 of those offices of OCR, Office of Civil Rights for the Department of Education, those field offices have been closed. So what would happen to a student who had a claim of religious discrimination in any one of these 3 universities? What is their recourse now?
I don't think they have much recourse.
So the concern over this committee about anti-Semitism, in reality, seems to be very hollow and empty, because they're not concerned about how you actually investigate and adjudicate a claim of religious discrimination. Am I correct?
Right. They should be calling Secretary of Education McMahon before the committee and asking her why she has decimated the very office that is supposed to be enforcing anti-discrimination law.
Mr. Cole, do you view universities as kind of places of independence that government should not be imposing its politics on a university? I mean, I heard implied here that maybe there should be some influence over who gets hired as faculty.
Yeah, and not only do I believe that, but the Supreme Court believes that. It has said that academic freedom is a special concern of the First Amendment, and what academic freedom means is that government officials, including members of Congress, don't have the power to decide that a particular university has too many liberal professors or too many conservative professors. That is for the university to decide. It does not empower members of this committee to complain about DEI programs that they don't like. That is for the university to decide under academic freedom, under the core principle of the First Amendment, that universities make these decisions, not politicians.
I yield back. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. I now recognize the gentlelady from New York.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Stefanik.
Thank you. A question for each of you. Is calling for the genocide of Jews protected speech on your campus, starting with Haverford?
No, of course not.
And what disciplinary action has been taken or would be taken if someone made that call?
Representative, there have been no such calls, and we would use all of our disciplinary actions to follow through on any such call. I would never expect that to happen at Haverford, and if it would, we would deal with that swiftly.
Well, let me ask you a specific question then. There was a student group on Haverford's campus who called for the complete dismantling of the apartheid settler colonial state of Israel by all means necessary. What does by all means necessary mean to you?
Invoking that kind of terminology is repugnant because of what it can mean, and I will not
So does that depend on the context?
I will not defend that statement.
So what disciplinary action was taken against that group or those individuals who made that call? Any disciplinary action? Was there any disciplinary action taken against that group or those individuals?
Those kinds of statements are
I'm not asking you if they're
very
repugnant. I'm asking about the disciplinary action. You were the one university president who failed to lay out if any disciplinary action has been taken, if any suspensions or expulsions. So I am asking you, was there any disciplinary action taken?
Disciplinary action can include expulsion and...
I'm not asking what it can include. I'm asking, was it taken?
I will not be talking about individual cases here, and I'm saying that that is...
So have there been any disciplinary actions taken by Haverford related to anti-Semitism? Any?
Disciplinary actions are absolutely in our work.
Have they been taken?
Against anti-Semitism.
Have they been taken by Haverford?
Yes, there have been some.
I want to ask you another example. There was a professor of mathematics and statistics who posted after the October 7th Hamas terrorist attacks, quote, "We should never have to apologize for celebrating these scenes of an imprisoned people breaking free from their chains. This was a historic moment to be recorded in their history books." Jewish students have reported that you said this post could be, quote, perceived in many ways. Does this post simply depend on the context, President Rabin? And were there any disciplinary actions taken against this professor?
Such posts have been incredibly harmful to our entire community, and I disavow them and that outcome for us.
Was there an investigation of the professor?
Investigations happen in all such cases.
So yes, in this case.
Investigations happen in all such cases, as I have said, and we follow...
This is a simple question. The other presidents are answering this straightforward as to disciplinary action. Again, these university presidents who are former presidents fail to answer these direct questions. In this case, was there disciplinary action taken or an investigation of this professor?
Respectfully, Representative, I will not be talking about individual cases.
Respectfully, President of Haverford, many people have sat in this position who are no longer in the positions as president of universities for their failure to answer straightforward questions. Another question I have, because this is a theme at Haverford, there was an administrator who said that, quote, "Racial minority students have never felt safe at Haverford, and that Jewish prospective students should not expect to feel safe and should instead be brave." This was according to litigation against your college. Was there any investigation into this administrator for making those statements?
That report does not reflect the administrators that I know who stand strongly with me and the entire college against anti-Semitism.
So that didn't happen, is your position? Was that statement not made by that administrator?
That statement does not comport with those administrators that I know.
I'm not asking if it comports with the administrators that you know. I'm saying, is it your testimony that that statement did not happen, even though it's coming out in litigation? So are you saying it did not happen?
What I am saying is that I cannot imagine that happening from those colleagues of mine.
Well, let me ask you, if it did happen, what disciplinary action would Haverford take against that administrator?
At Haverford, we do not tolerate discrimination or harassment or bias.
And what does that mean, not tolerate? Does that mean suspension, firing of that individual? What does that mean?
It means following all of our policies, which begin with investigation and then can lead to any of the aspects that you listed.
For the American people watching, you still don't get it. Haverford still doesn't get it. It's a very different testimony than the other presidents who are here today who are coming with specifics. So again, this is completely unacceptable, and it's why this committee has stepped in, because higher education has failed to address the scourge of anti-Semitism, putting Jewish students at risk at Haverford and other campuses across the country. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. I recognize now the gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr.
Adams.
Chairman. I mean, as a former college professor, I really hate to see that we're threatening our leadership of these schools. But thank you, Mr. Chair. We're here today to discuss something that should never be up for debate. Every student, regardless of background, deserves to feel safe and welcome and protected on campuses, on all campuses. And that includes Jewish students, that includes Muslim students, that includes every student. Anti-Semitism is real, it's rising, and it has no place in our schools, our communities, or in our country, and I want to be real clear about that. But this week, my office and I met with a group of Jewish students from Columbia, students who came to Washington not to cause controversy, but to be heard. And they told me what they're living through. Jewish students denied housing after participating in a protest, religious observances disrupted, students locked out of dining halls during kosher Passover or unable to gather for Shabbat. Others disciplined for simply wearing shirts that say ICE off campus. And perhaps most troubling, students forced into anti-Semitism training led by someone who really wasn't even Jewish. I share these stories not to spark outrage, but because they're real. But I believe that we cannot confront hate unless we listen to the people living with it. And so when Jewish students say that they feel unsafe, we have to take that seriously. And that also means upholding civil rights under Title VI, not replacing legal standards with partisan scorecards. And that means resourcing the Office for Civil Rights, not cutting it. And that means fostering interfaith efforts that build bridges, not eliminating DEI programs that were designed to create belonging for everyone. And let me just say that plainly. Jewish safety and free expression are not mutually exclusive. We can and we must protect both, and that's why I was encouraged to hear about Cal Poly's Interfaith Center, a space designed to include Jewish students not just in name, but in purpose. And because when students gather across faiths and backgrounds to talk, to grieve, to organize together, that's how we build resilience, and that's how we push back against hate. And that's how we remind each other that the loudest voices aren't always the ones speaking for all of us. And so today I do want to urge our committee to move forward carefully. Let's not act on faith, not fear. Let's not address hate, not weaponize it, or let's address hate and not weaponize it. And let's protect students, not politicize their pain. It's prevention, it's education, and it's showing every student from the Ivy League to the community college that they belong. Dr. Raymond, we've seen members of this committee and even the president blame diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts for the rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. But I've always believed DEI, when done right, help build understanding and safety for all students. So my question, how is your campus making sure that anti-Semitism is directly addressed in your inclusion efforts, not ignored or sidelined? And how do you ensure that Jewish students feel seen, included, and protected in these efforts? And have you found that this kind of work supports Jewish student safety rather than undermines it?
Inclusion work at Haverford is just that. It includes everyone. We are committed to supporting all students in our Jewish community and all of our Jewish community, and our work in inclusion and belonging is exactly that. We have 3 Jewish student groups on the campus who are very active. We have an active staff and faculty Jewish group, and all those come under the arch and the arc of inclusion and belonging.
Thank you very much. Dr. Armstrong, in your written testimony, you noticed that Cal Poly is establishing an interfaith center, which includes participation from Jewish students, and I've heard from students across the country who've said that their interfaith spaces, when done thoughtfully, can make a real difference. So could you share a little bit more about how that initiative was developed, who was involved, and how has it helped build trust or provide support for students who may feel targeted, especially in this tense moment on so many campuses?
Well, thank you for that question. We've been working over a number of years to make sure all students have a way to connect. We've been talking with Chabad and Hillel about this project, as well as other religious leaders, for several years. And, you know, COVID and like many things slowed us down a bit, but we view that as an opportunity where students can come together, where they can have the dialogue. We recently had a presentation that brought together a Palestinian and an Israeli view, and it was university and Chabad and Hillel participating in that.
Thank you, sir. I'm out of time, and Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. She yields back. I now recognize Representative Miller, the gentlelady from Illinois.
Thank you. President Manuel, of the 3 schools represented here today, DePaul had the worst encampment. From the days the tents went up, the encampment on DePaul's campus was a hotbed of anti-Semitism. Signs featuring terrible anti-Semitic slogans and images glorifying terrorism were displayed in the encampment. We saw images of a flag depicting the spokesman of the terrorist group, Hamas. We saw a sign that said, "Jewish safety cannot be achieved until Palestine is freed." There were reports of people at the encampment threatening to slit Jews' throats. One student walking through the university Well, there were 1,000 complaints from students in the community. The encampment remained in place for 17 days. President Manuel, how many students were suspended for their conduct at the encampment?
Thank you for the question. The security and safety of our students is the top priority in that moment. The moment we realized that safety was being jeopardized, we moved with Chicago Police Department to abandon the encampment. Please know that our public safety officers are not sworn officers, and we need to work with CPD to make that happen. In review of the encampment, there were 8 student groups that were brought in for investigation. 2 of them were immediately suspended and put on probation, which means they can't access university resources, including financial resources. There were 2 people that were arrested. I believe one of them was a student in the aftermath of that. But what happened in the aftermath of that is we realized our inadequacies in that moment, and we're able to put together a culture of accountability that includes new masking and ID policies, new time, place, and manner policies. And since that moment, we've been able to repel 4 such efforts for outside entities to come and take over campus properties.
Well, I'm glad to know that you are moving forward on better policies. So you're saying that this encampment remained in place for 17 days and there were $500,000 worth of property damage, and you were only able to suspend 2 students?
I'm saying that the lessons we learned from that moment have activated it.
2 students were arrested. I mean, not arrested, suspended.
2 student groups were suspended, 2 people were arrested. I believe one was a student.
For $500,000 worth of damage in 17 days. You got 2. Woo. Okay, the DePaul Student Conduct Code also states dismissal is a permanent separation from the university. How many students were dismissed from DePaul as a result of the encampment?
Our codes have been updated as a result of what we've learned from the encampment. From that encampment, I don't believe any students were permanently dismissed or expelled, but the new accountability code we have has prevented these actions from
So before
happening
you
again.
have your new accountability code, you didn't have anything in place where a student could be dismissed for violent speech and for causing $500,000 worth of damage?
Anybody who caused violence or damaged property could go through that process. Regarding the encampment, that's where we learned that we need to do better at applying ourselves to those policies, and that's where the policy engagements came in place. That's where the changes.
There were 1,000 complaints, 16 instances of intimidation, 4 credible threats of violence, 77 reports of individual safety concerns, 4 allegations of battery, 13 harassment allegations, and at least 1 death threat. And you allowed this encampment to continue for 17 days, and 2 people were suspended. None were dismissed. Again, President Manuel, during the encampment, 1 Jewish student told our committee last month that when she reached her dorm lobby, 2 students shouted at her, "We don't F with Zionists," even though she was not wearing anything to publicly indicate a Jewish or Israeli identity. She did not know either of them, but the incident made her think that they knew who she was. Were these individuals disciplined?
Every individual that was reported came through our system, was investigated, and results happened. I agree with you, Representative, that
So
we
were they
not at our
disciplined,
best.
suspended, or dismissed?
I gave you the results of who was suspended and arrested. I don't know of all the incidents that were there. I will tell you that the numbers that you mentioned were on a website that I released so that I could educate the community about the dangers of that encampment. That's when we learned we had to do better, and we had to create a culture of accountability.
So much of the information I read earlier regarding hundreds of complaints and violent anti-Semitic signage had been posted online. However, the university has taken that website down.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you.
We need to move on. I recognize the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. McMath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also Ranking Member Scott. And thank you to our witnesses for taking the time to be with us here today. I also want to thank the students, any students that are with us, any students that are watching this morning. And I do say that I'm very, very sorry to those who are victims of hate crimes. My son Jordan was unfortunately killed in a racially motivated shooting. So I know what it's like for your family to be attacked solely because of who you are or how you were born. Anti-Semitism remains a growing threat on college campuses today, but the actions taken by President Trump and House Republicans seem to be motivated more by going viral on social media than rooting out anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred on campus and in our society. The actions taken and supported by the majority will not improve this situation. They will only foster distrust between ethnic and religious groups on and both off campus. Instead of taking real steps to address anti-Semitism, the majority has chosen to cut the funding and fire the federal employees that are tasked with responding to these incidents on our school grounds. They have paused and threatened funding meant to protect synagogues and other Jewish community centers from shootings and other threats through the nonprofit security and targeting violence and terrorism prevention grant programs. They have pardoned and defended the actions of violent felons and rabid anti-Semites, criminals that were directly involved in attacking police and killing an officer here on Capitol Hill, January 6th. When white supremacists marched through the University of Virginia wielding torches with the purpose of publicly intimidating Jews and other minorities, the president said that they were very fine people on both sides. They are not the actions of a party or a president who is engaging in good faith to address this very real crisis and problem. Any attempt to explain away one of the oldest forms of ethnic and religious hatred solely for political gain is truly a disservice to the American people. It cheapens and it undermines the centuries of sacrifice and interfaith struggle to build bridges and take the difficult but very necessary steps that will bring peace and allow people to practice their faiths free from intolerance. Fighting anti-Semitism should not be used as a political tool. The work is simply too important, and the stakes are simply too high. Today, my state is home to the largest Jewish population in the Deep South. Georgia has become a beacon of prosperity for Jewish families, hoping to live together in peace, free from judgment regarding their faith. But it has not always been this way. I live just a few miles from the site of one of the most heinous and violent acts of anti-Semitism in the history of this country, the lynching of Leo Frank. I have been to the halls of names at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem a number of times. It takes commitment from every single one of us to ensure that the atrocities of the past never repeat themselves. I ask the American people and all those who care, truly care about religious freedom in this country, all those who want this country to live up to the promise that all of us, every single one of us, is created equal, to compare what they hear from my Republican colleagues today to the actions that they take when the cameras aren't rolling. And I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady, and I thank the gentlelady for her experience that informs her as well. Now I recognize a gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I happen to agree with my colleague. Actions speak louder than words, and we need action. And that's what I hope that we see here today, not just in the week leading up to this hearing, we all of a sudden find a conscience and start action. So let me start with you, Dr. Manuel. On October 18th, 23, DePaul Students for Justice in Palestine held a rally calling for the Intifada revolution, encouraging terrorist attacks to be perpetuated against Jewish civilians. On the same day, Jewish student leaders contacted DePaul administrators expressing feelings of saying they were increasingly scared that the safety and for the safety of the Jewish community. Does that ring a bell? Okay. The following day, October 19th, 2023, pro-Hamas rallies on campus resulted in the physical assault of a Jewish student. Sound familiar? 6 months later, on April 29th, 24, a pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas mob occupied DePaul's Lincoln Park campus. So there was an encampment on April 29th, correct?
Correct.
Did you remove it or disable it on that day?
No, we did not.
Okay. Why?
Representative, we learned an awful lot from...
I'm not asking what you learned. I'm asking why you made the decision, because I'm going to refer you to your policy that you have in place. Why didn't you follow your policy?
Our immediate instinct was to work with our students. The reference...
How'd that go?
Not very well.
You want to ask Michael how that went?
Yeah, it did not go very well.
Thank you.
And I apologize for that.
Your apologies are a little hollow. On May 10th, you issued a statement. So the encampment's still there, April 29th. It's now May 10th. On May 10th, you issued a statement titled Quad Safety Concerns. So you knew there was a safety issue, hence issuing the statement. Here was the statement. You urged all members of the DePaul community to avoid the quad. Well, that's great. Again, hey, let's make sure that we attack the law-abiding citizens, but not deal with the problem of the encampment. So you knew yourself there was a problem, but decided not to remove it. Why?
So that at that moment, we realized that the security and safety of everybody was in jeopardy. That is the moment that we decided to work with CPD.
And it took you 6 days?
Our public safety officer.
I mean, no, it took you 6 days because you knew it was dangerous. You didn't remove it on the 10th. You didn't remove it until 6 days later. So it took you 6 days to coordinate an effort to remove an encampment?
It took us the moment we realized, we went to CPD and asked for
Which
their
was
help.
when? When did you realize you had a problem?
We started working with CPD from the first day so that they were aware of those
Okay,
situations.
so 3 weeks. It took you 3 weeks?
It took us from the time you mentioned until the 16th or 17th to coordinate with CPD to get
You
there.
think that's acceptable?
I do not. And
Okay,
what we've
wonderful,
learned-
wonderful, wonderful. So I don't think the issue is more policies. I think the issue is action. So the people that are in charge, would you say that that is an acceptable amount of time for action?
I would agree with you that we need to do better.
Great. So would you agree with me also that almost 3 weeks from the 29th to the 16th is not an acceptable time for security to take action to disassemble an encampment? Would you agree with me on that?
I would. And
Thank you very much. So who has been fired or who has been replaced? Because that doesn't seem real tough to me. Anybody?
What we have learned,
Anybody been replaced?
there has been turnover. It's not
I'm not
because of
asking
this.
turnover. What consequences happened for the people who were supposed to be in charge?
The development of our accountability
Any
culture.
consequences? Yeah, were there, let's start with a simple,
retraining.
let's start with a simple one. Any consequences?
To student groups, yes.
Not just, I'm talking to the people who didn't follow your procedures of 3 weeks. Because let me read it, just in case you don't know your policy, but let me read it. This is from your policy. May not impede passage or in or out of any facility, may not involve activity that is violent or otherwise threatens the safety of demonstrators or any members of the community, may not interfere with business or academics of the university. These are your policies did anyone get reprimanded for that?
What I mentioned is that we have done significant review and learned from this.
You don't need to do review. Was anyone held accountable other than Michael and his friend that sustained a concussion and a broken wrist? So what actions changed? Because you got great policies and you got great lip service. The problem is you need action. And unless you as the president of the university is willing to take action, not lip service, I can talk about working out all day long, but there's a lot difference between me working out and me talking about it. So my question is, if there is another encampment on that, are you taking it down that next day?
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you.
I thank the gentlelady, and I recognize the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Representative Hayes.
Good morning, and thank you to our witnesses for being here and to all of the students who are following along and paying attention to this hearing. It is incredibly painful for me as a member of Congress to sit and witness anti-Semitism and discrimination against students on college campuses being politicized over and over and over again. As the ranking member stated, we've had 8 hearings on this topic. There are members on the other side who only show up for hearings on this topic, and yet no real action has been done. When we talk about actions that are taken, I heard members talking about property damage. There was over $2 billion in property damage and expenses to taxpayers as a result of the January 6th insurrection. And the president gave sweeping clemency to 1,600 people, and it's been celebrated by the other side. The Confederate flag was flown inside of the United States Capitol for the first time in our history, and the people who did that are being celebrated. So we have to take a stand against discrimination in all forms on this committee, and all students on all campuses should feel free from discrimination and protected and have their right to learn in an environment. To the college presidents, you will find no safe harbor here if you have not taken actions and steps to ensure that students are safe on your campuses. All students. Hostility and prejudice against Jewish students is wrong, and similarly, other students who are not feeling safe on campuses is also wrong, and this committee has done nothing. Actually, some of the actions taken by this committee have targeted some of those students and literally made them unsafe on campus. So we need to all agree that discrimination is intolerable on college campuses, and you have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that the civil rights of students are protected. I have a bunch of questions, but because I want to know about actions, but just please yes or no. I'm going to just go down. Dr. Raymond, are you prioritizing the physical safety of students on your campus today?
Yes, safety is top priority.
Dr. Manuel, do you believe that teaching the history of discrimination, even when it's painful, is incredibly important for our institutions of higher education?
Yes.
Dr. Cole, have you clarified and publicized the rules surrounding campus protests for all students to see?
I'm not speaking here on behalf of Georgetown, but we have a clear policy at Georgetown.
Is it publicized?
Absolutely, it's on our website. I was the chair of the working group on free speech and campus culture. We believe in free speech, and we believe in protecting people from discrimination, and we believe in making a distinction between the two, which unfortunately many members of this committee do not believe in.
Thank you. Dr. Armstrong, have you implemented reporting mechanisms for incidents of bias on your campus?
Yes.
Dr. Raymond, have you clarified and raised awareness around university standards for anti-discrimination educational programs?
Yes, we have.
Dr. Manuel, do you believe that it is important that students see themselves reflected in the faculty at your university?
I do, ideologically and every other category as well, yes.
Dr. Cole, not on behalf of your university, but are students allowed to connect and engage with members in faith-based groups on campus so that they can express their ideas and ideologies in a protected way?
On every campus that I'm aware of, yes.
Thank you. Dr. Armstrong, have you convened a task force to combat anti-discrimination on campus?
Yes.
Dr. Manuel, do you understand the role of the Office of Civil Rights at the role that the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education plays in protecting students from discrimination at colleges and universities? And do you think that this would be helpful as you move forward trying to keep students safe on campus?
I do, and the OCR has been very helpful in helping us understand how to comply with the law.
Thank you. And with that, I think that this committee should be working on keeping OCR together to help you enforce these policies moving forward so that all students are protected on college campuses. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady.